Hello, welcome. My name is Sonia Chernik, and this is number 9 in the series of the 5D success model. And the 5D personality test is part of that success model. If you haven't watched the previous videos, I'd recommend that you do, because we're talking today about the sufferer mindset, and it's all been about mindsets and your mindset and how you can adopt and shift out of a mindset that's not suiting you to one that is going to be producing results and success you want in any area of your life. So that's why it's important to know all about the different mindsets and to be able to identify them through the 5D personality test, which you can take by going to the website below. So the sufferer mindset, we're going to begin with that today. And at its extreme, we're talking about the person that actually doesn't know what they don't know. And if you've heard of the 4 stages of learning of a new skill, this is the first stage of that. When the sufferer decides that they don't like where they're at, and they decide to get out of that predicament of not knowing what they don't know, because it's very uncomfortable. So if you want to know more about those stages, you can also find that at the website 5dpersonalitytests.com. So we're talking about various aspects of the sufferer, and at its very extreme, we're talking about the victim. And this can be seen as an actual orphan or a wounded child. They can be seen by others as an easy target of prey or fall guy. And there are many names that are given to the victim. But in general, what is considered to be the consensus of opinion is that they are at the mercy of another or on the mercy of others. Another aspect is the scarcity side of the sufferer at the extreme. And this scarcity can be in terms of not having received love and warmth, attention, or when they were younger, or none, or little, or not perceived that they did, or not having had the material things in sufficient quantities, literally being an orphan, not having the things, and also they can be needy in terms of being empty in terms of fulfillment, spiritual. So neediness comes out of the scarcity, but at this point, at the extreme, they don't know what they don't know. So they've got nothing to compare. They see others in the same situation as they are. Another aspect of the sufferer at the extreme is they doubt themselves, because they're at the extreme, they've got others doing things for them in the main, or reliant on others for sufficiency, because they're coming from a space of survival. And when you're coming from a space of survival, you're doing whatever it takes, but you do get doubts, and that doubt leads to low self-worth, low self-esteem. So this is a real key point to the sufferer in the extreme, that they suffer from extreme low self-esteem, and consequently they start to become quite judgmental and critical of themselves and fault-finding with themselves, and that's projected later on when they decide to get out of that. When they start doing the comparison, that's projected onto others, and they start seeing fault and criticize and be judgmental of others. And that's something that can happen quite easily. So another aspect is the way that they deal with fear, and this can be a trauma or a fright of some sort. And the way the sufferer at the extreme deals with fear is to become frozen, stuck, paralyzed, immobile. And if they don't have something that happens to them to get them out of that, then they stay stuck and go into deep depression. And what can come of that? We don't want to go down that road. But a final aspect to consider about the sufferer at the extreme is that they are misfortune magnets. And of course, at the extreme, they're not aware, not even aware, that they attract negativity towards them. This can be in the format of being accident prone, attracting health problems to them of all sorts, attracting wrong partnerships, both in their personal and professional life. And this becomes a vicious circle because they then adopt an attitude that things always go wrong for them, and certainly with that mindset they will do. So looking still at the sufferer at the extreme, here I've summarized what we've just spoken about, different aspects. The victim, which is coming from survival mode, at the mercy of others. We're talking about the aspect of scarcity, which leads to a neediness, and from that neediness they'll decide to move into servant soldier or indeed at searcher mode, depending on the type of neediness. Self-doubt, which leads to indecisions, procrastination, self-consciousness, and of course severe low self-esteem, self-worth. The other aspect is how they deal with fear. They become frozen, stuck. If they get unstuck, if they decide to flee, they'll end up in the servant mode. If they decide to fight, they'll end up in the soldier mindset. And if they decide to take flight and trust in the universe or a greater intelligence, then they'll move into the searcher come seeker mode. And the final aspect of the sufferer at the extreme to consider is that they're a misfortune magnet. And when they start to see this, when they start to get the awareness, they'll notice that that life doesn't just happen to them. But at the extreme end, this is how they view life, that life happens to them. And therefore, with that view, their like will attract like, and they will definitely be attracting more and more negativity. So there are many feelings associated with the sufferer that's operating in the shadow or in the dark, and this is the opposite to the shadow. This shadow is the opposite to the sufferer operating from the light, and there are many different feelings. I've come up with about 40 different types of feelings, starting from feeling abandoned to ending with feeling unlucky and victimized. And you can take a look at all of those different feelings, the list on the website below. Another thing to consider with the sufferer in the shadow is the problem, which is that they do lack awareness and yet they don't know it. And the belief that comes about is that life happens to me, it's not my fault, I'm not responsible, it's somebody else's fault. So they end up playing the blame game. Consequent of that belief is the behavior, the results, one of refusal or denial, to look into their past, to look at their feelings and emotions. And if they're not doing that, they're not going to be learning and being able to get out of that space. And the outcome is therefore that they stay stuck mentally and emotionally. This is because the repressed feelings are there and the emotions are there, stuck in the body, stuck within them. And somehow they have to be expressed, and they will have to come out somehow, some way, some form, usually in the body in terms of health issues, but they can come out in other forms, in other ways. So this is just a few of the types of feelings that we're going to cover. If they feel victimized, which the sufferer in the shadow will do, then they end up becoming the victimizer. So it's you've done this to me, I'm going to do this to you. So that revenge type of attitude. Also, another feeling that I'm going to pick, just one of the full list of 40 that's on the website below. They feel unlucky, and therefore they become unlucky. They become that misfortune magnet. They feel fearful, and this is expressed in terms of being frozen with fear, as opposed to other ways of dealing with fear, coping with fear. And when you're frozen with fear, you can end up worrying, and it takes the form of can take the form of anxiety, which can lead to overwhelm, and can be expressed in the format of perhaps something like OCD, and that's obsessive compulsive disorder, or panic attacks. So those repressed feelings will have to be, as I said earlier, expressed somehow. Unworthiness is another feeling attributed to the sufferer in the shadow, and that can be feeling unworthy of love and attention, unworthy of abundance in any form, abundance of money, material possessions, or an abundance of attention. And what happens in that situation, they become addicted. In order to feel better about themselves, they start to behave in a way, take on a behavior to excess. That can be excess food, excess drink, excess alcohol. So the only way to get out of that is develop an increased awareness, and then in that way you become the sufferer in the light. The sufferer in the light is the opposite of the sufferer in the shadow. The sufferer in the shadow, the motto is I can't, and the sufferer in the light is moving to I can. And once they adopt that motto, then they can move in any direction, and the direction of the soldier, servant, or the searcher, seeker. So if you'd like to know more about all of those mindsets, you can go to the website below, 5dpersonalitytest.com. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.